So last night, Joe Biden held an exclusive big money 25 Wall Street donor fundraiser, and he kicked the media out of that fundraiser when it was time for the question and answer portion. The following is a quote from reporter Mariana Sotomayor, who was one of the people invited to cover that event. This pool report was based just on his opening remarks, because your pooler was quickly kicked off the phone call when Biden said he was ready to take questions from any of the 25 donors present, a move that goes against traditionally covering these pooled fundraisers in their entirety. Also, reporters heard Biden over the phone, not through Zoom, as has been the common practice in the virtual campaign era. And so what that's saying, basically, is that Joe Biden held an exclusive fundraiser, only 25 people. And if you think that, to have a fundraiser for 25 people with a potential future president, that it's going to be cheap, you're kidding yourself. This was very exclusive, big ticket, and Joe Biden gave 5 minutes of opening remarks. Very general stuff about how Donald Trump's done a bad job, he's going to do a better job. The boilerplate stuff we've been hearing. But then the meat of the meeting, which was going to be Biden taking questions from the rich and wealthy and well-connected, the media was quickly ushered out. Sotomayor basically notes that they were just disconnected from their phone call. They didn't really get, a formal goodbye. They basically just got kicked off the line, and we assume that Biden went on for however long answering questions from those very wealthy financiers. It's extremely troubling because even if you're a fan of Biden, you have to realize this looks bad, that the media isn't being allowed to actually cover this event, that the media isn't being allowed to get a sense for what Joe Biden is telling rich people. Because here's the deal. Politicians, even better politicians than Biden, have often lied to regular working class folks. But they're much less likely to lie to the rich people they talk to behind closed doors. And so if anything, when they're answering questions from rich people, you might think you're more likely to get a sense of who they are and what they're saying. The fact that this wasn't covered makes me think, because I don't trust Biden, I don't believe Biden has the interests of working class people at heart, that he's actually detailing his real plan after he wins, if he does win, to those rich and wealthy and well-connected donors, and he's telling everybody else, the other 300 plus million Americans, what his, quote-unquote plan is, every other day of the week. It's unacceptable for this to happen. This is one of the things also that hurt Hillary Clinton back in 2016. We remember that Hillary Clinton, before she was running for president, gave a whole bunch of speeches to Goldman Sachs and other big financial institutions, and she made a lot of money doing it, but she refused to actually release the transcript of those speeches, making people wonder, and not without reason, what was she telling those rich people that she won't tell us? Was she saying basically that nothing will fundamentally change, like Joe Biden has often told donors? Was she saying that she doesn't even want to do mild improvements to Obamacare? Was she basically saying that when I run for president, I will pretend to be something of a progressive, but I mean none of it? I am promising you that right now, where the pores can't hear us. That's what's troubling about this. And this is actually quite interesting because according to most of the media that were talking about this story, this is a relatively recent development for Joe Biden. For the most part, he has allowed media to cover these high-level fundraisers that he's been doing on Zoom and that he's been doing in other venues. He has allowed the media to offer some transparency, and that's a good thing. But according to Sotomayor, she spoke to the Biden campaign after this disconnection she experienced, and they said this might be the new way we go forward, which is to say that Joe Biden has locked up the primary. He pretended to care about regular people enough enough to defeat Bernie Sanders, but now that it's time to run a traditional neoliberal campaign, and now that it's time to cozy up to the biggest donors and, express to them, that he is comfortable with totally selling out the working class, now it's time to close the ranks. Now it's time to make the phone calls private. Now it's time to do big money fundraisers with rich people and not have any accountability for what's being said in that room. That's what I'm getting. Now, maybe Biden will face pressure and he'll change his mind. Maybe some events will be covered and some won't. But then you'll really start to wonder, why is he allowing this group of 25 rich people to have their questions public and the other group not? Is he basically coaching those 25 to ask quote unquote progressive billionaire questions? And the rest are going to be, questions about, actually cutting taxes, and questions about making it harder for workers to join unions, and questions about how Joe Biden really isn't that concerned about fossil fuels and really isn't that concerned about financial regulations and so on and so forth. This is something that's very concerning to me. I never really trusted Joe Biden, of course. But if the Democratic Party wants to risk the same kind of optics that faced Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she wouldn't disclose her big money speeches, Joe Biden's falling into that very same trap. And again, on social media, everyone was like, well, Donald Trump doesn't allow media at every one of his fundraisers. Well, of course not. But whataboutism isn't an excuse. And if you're the Democratic Party, you're held to a different standard when it comes to actually giving a damn about regular working class people. If you actually pretend to be a regular working Joe, somebody who understands regular people, you then can't go and hide from them and hide from the media when you talk to 25 rich people who are giving you lots of money in exchange for you making promises to them. And I mean, you can see this with just one example of who was in that room, of who was a part of this fundraiser. Jordan from Status Quo tweeted the following last night when he said, opening remarks were from Evercore founder Roger Altman, who said in March, quote, the greater the extent that Biden is seen as the Democratic nominee, I think investors will be comforted, end quote. And so what you're seeing is that not only did Biden give some opening remarks and some other Wall Street people did, too, but the people in the room were like this Altman type. And their goal was to comfort the investor class, to basically let them know that Joe Biden would not rock the boat. As he said before, nothing will fundamentally change. That unlike Bernie Sanders, or maybe even, very mildly, Elizabeth Warren, there will be nothing done that's going to fundamentally alter Wall Street's unearned power and privilege. Biden in that room, you have to believe, Occam's razor is that he was basically taking questions in private from those 25 people so that when they asked him, are you actually going to build a more just, dignified, and humane society, Biden could say no and not have the press tell you he said no.